There are two types of lizard or reptilian kind of beings. When they appear on Earth, they try to do it covertly. Some come from a total different reality, others come from different planets. They all have their own agenda.
When we had EBA 1 in captivity from 1947, 1952, one of the big questions was, do you have a soul? EBA 1 said, absolutely I have a soul. It is eternal.
There are phenomena going on. We also have different life forms, and the Pentagon reports acknowledges that. So when Earth enters a full harmonious level 4 consciousness, those things will appear and they will affect everyone. And we can see that there are some forces on this planet, extraterrestrial forces, that try to ascend humanity faster.
Today on Cosmic Disclosure, we're with Tim, a tactical advisor from Germany who analyzes and suggests various strategies in relation to extraterrestrial groups in contact with Earth. Also joining us today is Captain Randy Kramer, who claims to be the public spokesperson for the United States Marine Corps Special Section. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
Glad to be here.
It's not very often we get two people on the set at the same time. So it's going to be a very exciting day. And I want to start it off by talking about the Reptilian Dracos that you have a lot of experience with, Randy.
Well, I mean, probably the first I'd learned about them was just hearing, rumors and scuttlebutts and so forth about them. But my first experience of them was when I was in the MDF, when they actually attempted an invasion of Mars. We were basically about to have a big fight between a group of Terran humans, a group of indigenous reptoids, and a group of indigenous insectoids. This dropship came down, and it was a whole drama affair, but that was my first time experiencing them and seeing them.
And for the audience, the MDF is?
Mars Defense Force, correct.
Okay.
My function is to be more diplomatic on everything, so you've been to the military and you are still in the military?
Absolutely, yes, still have active duty rank and security clearance, correct.
Perfect. What do you think is the actual relationship, the Dracos to human people right now?
Right now, minimal. I would say we probably started the eradication of the Draconians within Terran space in the late 90s or early 2000s. And from what I understand, there's less than 100 of them on the surface of the Earth right now, and they're being hunted down. So I consider them to be an old problem. Most often when people want to talk about them or their influence, you're really talking about the past and not much that is relevant to the future. Doesn't mean that they're not a problem in the larger universe, because they're still out there, but we have ejected them from our primary space and they're not nearly as much of a problem here as they ever were in the past, that's for sure.
So to my understanding and what I've heard is that the Dracos are still active in the universe and they still are trying to bring their system over certain planets.
Absolutely.
Can you agree on that?
Absolutely. No, I would consider of the larger intergalactic threats, yeah, they're a top 10 for sure. They're a top 10 intergalactic threat to anybody, anywhere, I would have to say.
Yeah. All right. I've learned a lot about them from the perspective of the Greys. Mm-hmm. I also learned from different sources that they opposed some kind of installation upon Earth, mm-hmm. which means they influence the system that Earth has.
Mm-hmm.
So the Greys accused them, or at least, well, from their perspective, there had been some modifications on the social structure system of the Earth.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah, that would be over time. I mean, there are certain people who have talked about the history of the Draconians influencing human culture. That's very true. I think that
they go way back.
Yeah, way back.
Yeah.
The kind of influence or breeding within the blue bloods or the royal families, that's correct from what I understand. So they have had an influence, and certainly a negative social influence that is what I would say is away from the intergalactic norm of moving towards type 1 civilization, which they have, pushed to keep us from getting to type 1 civilization, because that makes the species more controllable. But again, yeah, that's the history of, and definitely something that influenced us over time. But even though if they're physically not as much of a problem, yeah, they left their fingerprint for sure. And so some of the things we're dealing with in finance, banking, hierarchical structures, military governmental structures, we're still dealing with the mess that they left for sure.
From my understanding, at least some types of reptilians have influenced human, social structures. Some have done that by influencing very elite groups on this planet. And again, not all reptilians seem to be bad, at least that's my experience.
Oh, don't get me talking about that. That's speciesist talk. They are not all bad, so.
Okay,
yeah.
True, all right, okay.
Oh, yeah.
So it seems that some reptilian species tend to have their own advantages over people on this planet being so disinformed, and they try to, have their own take on that. I don't know if you want to add to that.
My personal experience of spending almost 6 months with the indigenous reptoids on Mars is they are some of the most amazing beings in the universe that I have ever met. And they are nothing like any of the other reptoids that I've met. And it has a lot to do with their culture, their evolution, what has happened to their society, what happened when the planet blew out its atmosphere, how they had to rebuild from that. They were incredibly warlike before that, and they really had to grow as a species, to be honest with you, in order to rebuild and terraform their planet. So I think it's a speciesist statement to say that any mammal, amphibian, reptoid is like this or like that. I think the truth is that the universe is all the things. The intergalactic experience is all the things. It's everything. It's every type of species, every type of civilization, every type of technology that you could possibly even imagine. And that's an incredible spectrum of various species from various types of, evolutionary developments who are as different as the day is long, from you go from one to the other. I think the tendency for people to think that is because most reptoids are not very emotional. They have little emotions, but they're not very emotional. So they tend to be more calculating. They tend to be a little more cold.
And you mentioned before to me that there's multiple types of reptilians.
Dozens that I'm aware of personally, but I would say just within our own galaxy, we've got to have thousands and thousands of civilized species that are reptilian.
What, from your perspective as a military person, have the Dracos, done to Earth? What are the systems they set up? Is there anything, specifically?
So the corporate structure, let's start with that, is a draconian structure. Their entire civilization is actually on a corporate model. So they don't necessarily have a Congress or a Senate or a council. They have an executive board. And the executive board is all about, profits and profit making. And so essentially, if we were to look at the corporate structure and say, wow, this seems a little psychopathic and sociopathic sometimes, it's because it's a draconian structure, not a structure of our own design.
And it's also about secret control.
Always, yeah, always. Always about a tiny number of people controlling everything that happens below them, making a pyramid with a very tiny, tiny tip top.
Someone coming from the topic of governance, I'm really interested in knowing what the military is going to do about that. Is there something?
Well, that's a complicated subject that really could involve way too much conversing about way too much nuance if we were to get into much detail. I would say this. Within the last, let's call it 20 years, the military, especially covert military operations, has begun to understand that there are certain things in which traditionally have not been seen as national security issues or national security threats. But now that we're looking at certain things that are endangering everybody's well-being and all of civilized life and all of social stability.
Like the whole universe.
Yeah, then we basically have been able to say, you know what, these are not traditionally the things that we categorize as national security, but if we're looking at outcomes, we have to consider these things as national security. So we've taken a little bit of a different viewpoint and now have conversations with various world leaders, military intelligence personnel, elected officials, say, look, we can't just suggest that you do this anymore. We're telling you this is a national security issue. So either get on board or you're in the way. And no one wants to be in the way when you tell them that they need to be on board for something. Our interaction with the intergalactic community is significant. It's our, and maybe I've said this once or twice, we understand now as a warrior species, which we understand that we are now. For decades, other species wanted to high road us and tell us, you're too aggressive, you're too violent. Until some other warrior species came along and said, no, we think you're smart and you're self-determined and you don't want someone to solve your problems and you don't want to wait around for somebody else's police department to show up to fix your stuff. So we think you're smart to do that. So now that we have accepted that, we've accepted that our role in this corner of the galaxy is only going to develop and grow further as that is concerned. Which means not only is the global security of the planet we live on, but the national global security of this corner of the galaxy is going to be dependent on whether or not we successfully do our job or not. And if we don't successfully do that job, then yeah, dozens, hundreds, thousands of worlds could be affected. If we do our job, the same number of worlds could be affected in a positive way.
Absolutely. Fascinating. Just one follow-up question. How important do you think is the time traveling or experience from the future in, realizing how important disclosure right now is?
I would say from what the guys at Time Corps have said to me, it's very important.
Yeah.
And their job is to kind of nudge us towards a direction of positive outcomes. And they would say, yeah, there's two paths. There's the path that you're on if you don't change, and then there's the path you have to be on if you don't want to die.
Failed timeline.
Yeah, it's either go this way and die or go this way and survive. So that's really where we're at.